Well, happy Memorial Day. In the rare turns of events, because I got today off, I am going to make another video. Now, this is about the debt ceiling deal. The House is doing what the House does and tries to cut spending. Really, they just want to cut spending to Democrat led bills, while the Democrats say we want a clean debt ceiling bill because we have to pay pay our debts. We already passed this law. You had your chance to make um, objections, and they didn't have the numbers, so now they're objecting. Now that they have control of the House, both Biden and Trump have says that the debt ceiling should be a clean bill, and I don't know how I feel about this because it's part of the checks and balances. This is a new bill that's being proposed to raise the debt ceiling in order to pay for the previous bills. So therefore, kind of starts over. But there's some people that says this is the GOP being sore losers because they didn't have the votes when the bills were being passed. That's what the process was. And others argue that this is now another bite at the apple to restart um, the due process over again. With that being said, there seems to be a deal that both, not Senator, but House Representative or Speaker of the House McCarthy has come to agreement along with Joe Biden with the agreement, and now it's time to sell it to the party so they could vote on it to avoid a default. According to CNN Politics, here's what's in the debt ceiling deal. Now, this is going to be where the meat potatoes are. This is going to be where the tires meet the roads, as they say. Now, according to this one, there is the bill right here, which is 99 pages. So I'm not going to read the bill. If someone wants to read the bill, that's on to them. The bill is available to be read on. But here's the what CNN considers the most important part of it. After several weeks of tense negotiation, President Joe Biden and the House Republicans have reached an agreement in principle to address the debt limit and cap spending. The drama is by no means over. Congressional leaders in both parties have to convince enough of their members to vote for the agreement, which contains provisions that the lawmakers on each side of the aisles don't support. I mean, that's what negotiation is. It's all about making a deal is. One side gives up, the other side gives up, and they come up with an agreement. It's part of the due process. The bill text, which was released Sunday evening, both parties are trying to cast a provisional and as favorable for their side. Here's what we know about the deal based on the bill text, the White House source, and the fact sheet circulated by the House Republicans. Addressing the debt ceiling, the agreement would suspend the debt limit through January 1st, 2025. This removes as a prudential issue for the 2024 presidential election. Caps on non defense spending under the deal, non defense spending would remain relatively flat in fiscal 2024 and increase 1% in fiscal 2025 after certain adjustments and preparations were made. According to the White House official, the adjustment includes shifting 20 billion of the internal revenue services to other non-defense areas and rescinding 30 billions to an unobligated COVID-19 relief funding, according to the official. After fiscal 2025, there will be no budget caps, according to the officials. The GOP fact sheet says that non-defense discretionary spending will be rolled back to fiscal 2022 levels, and the top line federal spending would be limited 1% annual growth for the next 6 years. The agreement calls for the spending of $886 billion in defense, $121 billion for veterans Medicare, and $637 billion on non-defense programs. After talking to the adjustments into account, according to the talking points, the White House disputed to the Democrat members, which were obtained by CNN. The debt ceiling bill that the House Republicans passed last month would return discretionary spending to fiscal 2022 levels and then limit the growth spending to 1% for a decade. Defense spending would be protected. Protections, veteran Medicare, the deal would maintain a full funding for veterans health care and would increase support for the PAC Act toxic exposure funding and nearly $15 billion for a fiscal year in 2024. According to the White House source, the GOP fact sheet said veterans Medicare would be fully funded, which is good because we gotta protect our veterans. As a veteran myself, I understand that the U.S. likes to send us into foreign conflict, and they think about the repercussions later. Let's see here. Expand work requirements. I heard that this was a big no for the Democrats. It makes sense, don't get me wrong, this expand for work requirements. If the government's going to pay you because you can't live or can't make enough money to live without the assistance of a job, then of course the government steps in. The work requirement requires you to at least work 20 hours a week. The agreement called temporary broadening of work requirements for certain adults receiving food stamps. Currently, childless, able-bodied adults between the age of 18 and 49 are only able to get food stamps for 3 months out of every 3 years unless they are employed for at least 20 hours a week or meet other criteria. The agreement will increase the upper limit of the mandate to age 55 in phases according to the bill text. However, the deal will also expand exceptions for veterans, people who are homeless, and former foster youth in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAPs, as food stamps are formerly known. And all the changes would end in 2023. The administration believes that the amount of the same number of food stamps recipients would be subject to work requirements because of exceptions, though it's waiting for the formal estimate. The White House officials said the agreement would also tighten the current work requirements in temporary assistance for needy families programs, primarily by adjusting the work participation rate credits and the states that can receive for reducing their caseload. The work requirements would not be introduced in Medicaid, which the House Republicans called for in their debt ceiling bill. I get Medicare and Medicaid confused. I think Medicaid is for people that don't work, and Medicare is for the elderly that put money towards the side that we're forced to take out. So that I know they call them entitlements because we're entitled to our money back, but I think that's kind of misleading. Kind of like with Social Security, it's not really an entitlement, but it is an entitlement because we're entitled to our money back. Same thing with Medicare. It's like we paid into a system, and once we get to a certain age, the government must honor those obligations. And people call those entitlements, and they say we must end all entitlements, and they kind of include those in it, but I don't really agree that they're entitlements. Although, if you look at the definition of entitlements, it does fit the definition. Claw back at some of COVID-19 relief funds. The deal will also rescind $30 billion in unobligated funds from the COVID-19 relief package that Congress passed in response of the pandemic, according to the House GOP fact sheet. It would retain $5 billion in funding to accelerate the development of COVID-19 vaccines and treatments, and funding for vaccines and treatments for the uninsured, according to White House source. It would also keep money for housing assistance in the Indian Health Service and other measures. Don't know exactly what this is. I guess the Native American Health Service is the only thing I can think of, because since we conquered them and now they're living off of land that was given back to them. So maybe the Indian Health Service fits that. Outside of that, I don't really know. Cut internal revenue spending funding. The agreement would cancel the total fiscal year of 2023 staffing funding requests at the House GOP said would go for new IRS agents, according to the fact sheet. Now, I know this is being disputed that they're not all going to be IRS agents, but they are going to be employees that are going to be employed by the IRS, and the IRS only goal is to collect revenue, whether they want to call them agents or call support or phone support service, because they do have call centers throughout the country for people to call in. You could consider those agents, or you could also consider them investigational agents where they actually build a case against you. The House Republicans have determined to jettison roughly $80 billion in IRS funding containing the Inflation Reduction Act that the Democrats passed last year. The GOP lawmakers argue that the money will be used to hire an army of new agents to audit Americans, but the agency says it will be used to support operations, modernize customer service technologies, and assist taxpayers. Because they want to assist you in order for you to pay your tax burden to them, and they want to make sure it's easy as possible for them to get their money. The deal would repurpose $10 billion from the fiscal 2024 and another $10 billion from the fiscal 2025 appropriation based on the non-defense area, according to the White House source. Sources restart the student loan payments. This has been a hot topic for quite some time. I think it was a hot topic when Trump did what he did by putting a pause on payments. So you pretty much had about 4 years, 5 years to really pay off your principal of the loan, because there was no interest being accrued during that period. So this was the best time for all students that have a student loan to pay off their principal, assuming that it was part of the educational federal backed loans. Because some people just took a personal loan. Let's see here. Under the deal, borrowers will have to begin paying back their student loans at the end of the summer, as Biden administration has already announced, according to another source familiar with the debt ceiling talks. The pause has been in effect since COVID-19 pandemic began. Also, the agreement would maintain Biden's plan to provide up to $20,000 in debt relief for qualifying borrowers. A source says, but the measure is currently before the Supreme Court, which is expected to rule in the coming weeks. So pretty much, I guess, McCarthy's banking on the Supreme Court to overturn that decision. I understand everybody's different. Everybody has their own circumstance. But that being said, I don't really agree with a debt relief. I mean, I understand that interest rates could probably be addressed to where it's not overbearing. But the thing is, people took on that debt themselves. They signed a dotted line because they wanted to go to college. And now they have to pay the bill. Pretty much, this is their obligation to pay back their bills. I mean, Congress is fighting really hard to pay off their bills that they've taken, which is taking on more debt to pay those bills. That's what the whole debt ceiling is. Now you're telling students that they could get $20,000 off of their payment. Now I think that $20,000 should be off of the interest, not off of the principal. I'm willing to concede to that part, where if the interest payments or the interest part of the loan should maybe be suspended, or the $20,000 should go towards the interest and not the principal. That way they still have to pay off the principal. But the deal will also continue income-driven repayment plan, according to the White House. The GOP last week passed a resolution seeking to block forgiveness program, as well to end the pandemic-related pause on federal student loan payments. Maintain climate and clean energy measures. This is a really hot topic right here. The agreement would not make any changes to the Inflation Reduction Act, climate and clean energy provisions. According to the White House talking points, the House Republicans have sought to repeal the law's clean energy tax credit and subsidies. The agreement will also include measures in the National Environmental Policy Act aimed to boosting the coordination of predictability and certainty associated with federal agencies. decisions making with the White House, according to the White House source. It will be determined the single lead agency charged with developing a single environmental review document, as also would require agencies to complete environmental reviews in 1 year or 2 years after the most environmental complex projects. Expedite the pipeline to West Virginia. The agreement will also agree to creating a Mountain Valley pipeline, a natural gas pipeline to West Virginia. Interesting. That is very interesting to say at least. Now, I do have one from the U.S. Today. Speaker McCarthy says student loan payments pause gone under debt ceiling deal. Here's what it means. A debt ceiling was finalized, blah, 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 blah. We already know about that from the previous CNN story. Are student loans still being deferred? Yes. Student payments and interest have been paused since the onset of the pandemic, and moratorium first adopted and extended under former President Donald Trump and then extended again under Biden. But that won't be the case for long. The Biden administration, whose mass student debt forgiveness plan is currently held up in Supreme Court and face a mounting pressure to lift the moratorium. Before the Sunday Deals event, efforts were underway to bring student loan payment back. A bill passed by the House last week would end the payments as well. Would end payments as well as Biden's broader plan to relieve up to $20,000 in student loan debt. As for Americans with the individual's income less than $125,000 per year, that's arbitrary. They're just drawing a line in the sand. Before that, in March, the student loan refinance company SoFi sued the federal government over the pause, seeking to end it because the government doesn't give students loans. They go through a bank, and SoFi is the bank that most of them use, and they gotta make money. They make money off of the interest. They don't make money off of the principal. They make money off the interest. And if you're telling them that they can't charge interest, then they cease to exist because they got overhead costs. Education Department prepares for the return to student loan payments. Educational Secretary Miguel Cardillo has stressed the moratorium has an expiration date at the Senate Appropriation Committee hearing in May. Secretary says borrowers should prepare to start making payments again no later than 60 days after June 30th or after the Supreme Court issues the decisions on the two cases challenging Biden's broad relief plan. The emergency period is over and we're preparing for our borrowers to restart, Cardano said in the hearing, but as reported by political and internal Education Department documents indicated that it could be until October at the earliest in the process to resume. According to the documents, department officials anticipate needing several months of transition back into payments. I guess they got to hire staff to address angry people trying to not pay their student loans. I guess that's what what that part is all about. Now that is it for my second video. There might be a third or fourth. I haven't really determined it. That being said, have yourself a wonderful Memorial Day. Go have some barbecue and some cheap beer or expensive beer, but drink responsibly. Drink responsible and act responsibility. Who cares? You understand what I'm saying. But with that being said, have yourself a wonderful day, morning, or evening.